Beneath the familiar surface of our world lies another, built by ancient hands. A sprawling labyrinth of tunnels and cities connects continents, all hidden from view. These master engineers created entire worlds underground, and their work challenges everything we think we know about the past. By the end of this journey, you will understand the incredible secrets of these subterranean networks and the brilliant minds that designed them. Why would entire civilizations choose to live in darkness? And what were they protecting down there? What does our own future hold for the spaces beneath our feet? What hidden history lies waiting just below where you stand right now? Our story begins with the primal safety of a cave mouth, a simple overhang of rock that offered our earliest ancestors shelter from a dangerous world. This was the first step, a natural refuge from storms and predators, but at some pivotal moment, the human relationship with the underground transformed. It was no longer just about finding shelter, it was about creating it. The first intentional strike of a stone hammer against a living rock wall marked a revolution. This was the dawn of subterranean engineering. People began to modify the earth itself, carving out chambers not for mere survival, but for organized purposes. These were the first dedicated storage spaces for precious food, the first ritual rooms for ceremonies deep in the earth's embrace, and the first tunnels deliberately dug to connect spaces. This shift from using what nature provided to actively shaping a hidden world was one of humanity's first major engineering projects. The tools were simple, yet brutally effective. Imagine using a pick made from a deer's antler to patiently chip away at solid limestone, or a heavy stone hammer to fracture bedrock. The work was agonizingly slow, a testament to sheer determination. These early artisans learned to read the rock, to find its weaknesses and work with the grain of the stone. They discovered how to create stable ceilings and reinforce walls, laying the foundational knowledge that would be passed down through generations. This was not random digging. It was the birth of a new kind of architecture, one that existed in perpetual darkness, where every carved room and connecting passage had to be planned and executed with precision. The ambitious underground empires of later centuries all trace their lineage back to these first, tentative cuts into the stone, a hidden genesis that set the stage for everything that was to come. This evolution from simple caves to carved chambers represents the very beginning of a grander concept. We must define what we mean by a hidden network, for it is far more than a collection of random tunnels. Think of it as a subterranean internet, a vast and interconnected system designed with clear purpose. The tunnels themselves are the data lines, carrying not information, but people, water, goods, and ideas. They connect vital nodes of activity, from living quarters and storage halls to religious sanctuaries and defensive strongholds. These were not isolated digs, but planned infrastructures built to last for centuries. Three key characteristics separate a true network from a simple hole in the ground. First is intentional design, evident in the precise angles of corridors and the strategic placement of rooms. Second is functional complexity, which means these spaces were engineered to support life. This is where we see the true genius of their builders. They carved sophisticated ventilation shafts that brought fresh air deep into the earth, sometimes using the natural draft between different levels. They built intricate water management systems with carved channels and hidden cisterns to collect and store precious rainwater, ensuring a supply even during long sieges or droughts. The third characteristic is often concealment. Many of these networks were deliberately hidden from the surface world. Entrances were camouflaged, perhaps looking like a simple well or a natural rock fissure. Some builders integrated their work with the existing geography, using a large, stable natural cavern as a central plaza, or carving a secret escape route through a maze of existing limestone formations. Defensive mechanisms like rolling stone doors, which could be released to block a corridor, or narrow passages that forced attackers to enter single file, show these were places meant to be defended. When you understand that a hidden network is an organized, living system, the scale of their ambition becomes staggering. These were not just shelters, but alternative landscapes. They linked entire communities and resources across vast distances, all hidden just beneath the feet of anyone walking on the surface. This definition transforms them from curious holes into a testament of ancient intelligence, a secret world built with foresight and incredible skill. The evidence of this ancient ingenuity is written not in one language, but in the very bedrock of our planet. If you were to walk the sun-baked plains of central Turkey, you might stumble upon a simple, unassuming hole in the ground. Peering inside, you would not see a mere cave, but the entrance to an entire city descending into the darkness. This is Derinkuyu, a labyrinthine metropolis capable of sheltering 20,000 people. Yet travel across the world to the dense jungles of Vietnam, and you will find the Khu Khai tunnels, a sprawling network so narrow and intricate it was used to outmaneuver entire armies. From the rock-cut churches of Lalibela in Ethiopia to the silent, multi-leveled cities carved beneath the island of Malta, the same story repeats itself. The impulse to build downward is a global human signature. What forces could drive such diverse cultures to choose a life beneath the soil? The reasons are as varied as the locations themselves, yet they share a common thread of profound adaptation. In Cappadocia, the answer was written in the soft volcanic rock, ideal for carving, and in the harsh reality of invasion. Entire communities would vanish underground for months at a time, safe from marauding armies on the surface. In the American Southwest, the ancestral Pueblones built elaborate cliff dwellings to escape the blistering desert heat, finding a stable, temperate climate within the canyon walls. For others, the drive was spiritual. The catacombs of Rome provided not just burial space, but secret gathering places for early Christians, while in China, vast subterranean spaces were sometimes created as hidden temples or for the storage of imperial treasures. Each site is a masterpiece of localized engineering. Derinkuyu featured massive, circular stone doors that could roll shut to seal corridors, along with hundreds of ventilation shafts reaching down to its deepest levels. The Khu Khai tunnels included hidden trapdoors, booby-trapped pits, and even underground kitchens designed to disperse their smoke far away to avoid detection. The Maltese Hypogeum, a multi-leveled sanctuary carved from solid limestone, showcases astonishing acoustic properties in its oracle room, where a single whisper can be heard throughout the entire chamber. This global perspective reveals a stunning truth. Faced with existential threats, whether from climate, war, or persecution, humanity's response was often the same. They did not just flee, they engineered. They looked not to the horizon for a new home, but directly beneath their feet, discovering that the greatest refuge was one they could build for themselves. Descending into Derinkuyu feels like stepping into a different world. The air cools instantly, and the only light comes from the electric bulbs strung along the corridors, revealing a city meticulously carved from soft volcanic rock. You walk past stables hollowed out for livestock, their stone mangers still visible. Further down, you find entire living quarters, communal kitchens, and even churches with vaulted ceilings and altars, all hewn from the earth. The smell of damp stone and ancient dust hangs in the air, a permanent reminder of the thousands who once sought refuge here. This was not a temporary camp, it was a self-sufficient metropolis built to endure. At its peak, Derinkuyu could shelter an estimated 20,000 people, along with their animals and food stores, for months on end. The engineering that made this possible was nothing short of genius. Massive circular stone doors, each weighing several hundred kilograms, could be rolled across key passages to seal off entire sections from invaders. Dozens of ventilation shafts, some stretching over 55 meters to the surface, ensured a constant supply of fresh air to the deepest chambers, 8 levels down. Sophisticated wells tapped into a hidden underground water table, providing a secure supply that could not be poisoned by an enemy above. As one historian aptly stated, Derinkuyu is not just a refuge, it is a self-sufficient underground metropolis. The identity of its original architects is still debated, with some evidence pointing to the Phrygians over 2,500 years ago, while early Christians later expanded and used it extensively. For centuries, this hidden city served as the ultimate sanctuary, its inhabitants vanishing from the surface to escape wave after wave of invaders, from Arab armies to Mongol raiders. It stands as the absolute peak of ancient subterranean engineering, a testament to human resilience carved in stone. The builders of Derinkuyu and other subterranean cities did not have modern engineering degrees, yet they possessed a profound, hard-won understanding of the earth. Their success rested on a few fundamental principles we still use today, just with different tools. They mastered the art of load distribution, recognizing that the immense weight of the world above them had to be channeled safely around the empty spaces they created. This is where the arch became their most powerful tool. By carving ceilings into a curved, arched shape, they directed the compressive forces of the rock downward along the walls, creating a stable, self-supporting structure that could last for millennia. Their material selection was equally brilliant. They did not fight the geology they found, they worked with it. In Cappadocia, they exploited the soft, carvable tuff. In harder limestone regions, they sought out natural fissures and softer layers to make their work easier. The very act of digging was a study in adaptation. In stable rock, they practiced what we might call soft mining, carefully carving and chipping away. But in looser soils, they understood the need for shoring, using timber beams to support the ceiling until a permanent, arched stone structure could be put in place. Before a single pick struck stone, the planning began. How did they ensure a ventilation shaft dug from the surface would meet a tunnel being dug from below? They used simple but effective surveying tools, a basic plumb line, a vessel of water to find a level, and carefully aligned guide marks on the tunnel walls allowed them to maintain a straight line and a consistent grade over astonishing distances. Removing the excavated material was a colossal logistical puzzle. Workers would pass baskets of rubble hand to hand in long chains through the narrow tunnels, a slow, laborious process that required immense coordination. For the hardest rock, they employed a technique called fire setting. They would build a hot fire directly against the rock face, heating it intensely. Then they would douse the hot stone with water or vinegar, causing it to fracture and crack, making it possible to break apart with stone hammers and bronze picks. This was dangerous, smoky work, but it was effective. This entire process, from initial survey to final finishing, was guided by an empirical understanding of physics. They learned through trial and error which rock layers were stable and which were prone to collapse. They knew to avoid areas with visible water seepage. Their genius was not in complex mathematics, but in a deep, tactile familiarity with their material and a patient, methodical approach to shaping it. They were not just diggers, they were architects of the void, and their understanding of the silent forces within the earth allowed them to build empires in the dark. The very rock beneath their feet was the first and most important blueprint. These ancient subterranean architects did not impose their will upon the earth arbitrarily. Instead, they engaged in a deep, intuitive dialogue with the geology, choosing their sites with the care of a master craftsman selecting the perfect piece of wood. They sought out stone that was soft enough to be carved with simple bronze or even stone tools, yet structurally sound enough to stand for centuries without collapsing. In Cappadocia, the answer was tough, a soft volcanic rock that hardens upon exposure to air, creating a material that was paradoxically both easy to excavate and remarkably durable. In Malta, it was the Globigerina limestone, a fine-grained stone that could be cut with a saw when first quarried but would then harden into a resilient building block. This was not a random choice, it was a fundamental prerequisite for success. A network carved into unstable shale or loose sand would have been a death trap, a fleeting project doomed to collapse. The longevity of these sites is a direct result of this careful material selection. They worked with the Earth's own strengths. In areas where water-permeable layers sat above impermeable clay, they knew to expect seepage. Their response was not to abandon the site, but to engineer around the problem. They carved intricate drainage channels directly into the floors and walls, guiding water away from living quarters and into specially designed cisterns, turning a potential hazard into a vital resource. As one geologist studying these sites remarked, the ancient engineers were practical geologists. They read the landscape and the rock to determine the safest and most efficient ways to build. This deep understanding is most vividly illustrated in networks that grew over generations. A city like Derinkuyu was not built in a single lifetime. It was a project spanning centuries, with each new generation adding another level, another wing, another complex of rooms. This long-term expansion required a profound, inherited knowledge of the material's long-term behavior. They knew which rock layers could support the weight of another level carved below them. They understood how the stone would react to centuries of stress and seasonal moisture. Their legacy is not just one of excavation, but of symbiosis. They did not conquer the underground world. They learned its language and built in harmony with its inherent properties, creating enduring monuments that stand as a testament to this timeless collaboration between human ingenuity and the bones of the earth. But carving stable rooms was only half the battle. A city of 20,000 people cannot simply hold its breath. The true test of these underground engineers was solving the invisible problem of the air itself. How do you keep a metropolis alive when it is buried under millions of tons of rock? The solution was to make the entire network breathe like a living organism. They designed sophisticated ventilation systems that functioned as the lungs of their subterranean world. This relied on a simple, powerful principle of nature known as convection. Cooler, denser air is heavier, so it naturally sinks. Warmer air, being lighter, rises. Ancient engineers harnessed this constant, silent dance. They carved vertical shafts that reached from the deepest chambers all the way to the surface. As the cool, fresh air from above flowed down these shafts, it pushed the stale, warm air from the inhabited areas up and out through other openings. This created a continuous, natural circulation. In Derinkuyu, over 50 of these ventilation shafts were strategically placed throughout the city, some descending more than 55 meters. From the surface, many were cleverly disguised as simple water wells, their true purpose hidden from any potential invaders. In larger or more complex networks, engineers would place multiple shafts at different points to create cross-ventilation, a deliberate airflow that swept through corridors and rooms, preventing any area from becoming a dead zone. This careful, deliberate planning was a matter of life and death. It prevented the dangerous buildup of carbon dioxide from human breath and the toxic fumes from torches or cooking fires. It was this unseen engineering, this mastery of the very atmosphere, that transformed a dark, sealed tomb into a livable, long-term sanctuary. The people below could breathe easily, completely unaware of the brilliant, natural system working tirelessly above their heads to keep them alive. Yet, even the most perfectly ventilated city cannot survive without water. Securing a reliable supply was the ultimate challenge, a puzzle solved with equal parts ingenuity and brute force. Deep within the heart of these underground worlds, engineers tapped into hidden rivers. They located and accessed underground aquifers, natural reservoirs stored within porous rock layers. In Derinkuyu, they carved deep, internal wells that plunged straight down to the water table, a source completely isolated and protected from any enemy poisoning the surface streams. But their mastery went far beyond simply finding water. It was about controlling its every move. They transformed their stone cities into vast, intricate water catchment and distribution systems. From the surface, they carved hidden channels, cleverly disguised conduits that diverted rainwater away from prying eyes and into the depths below. Every drop was precious. The roofs and floors of entire networks were often sculpted with a slight, intentional gradient, guiding water through carved gutters and into waiting cisterns. These cisterns were monumental feats themselves, giant tanks meticulously carved from the living rock and then sealed with waterproof plaster to prevent any precious liquid from seeping back into the earth. This was not just about drinking water. In larger complexes, water was lifeblood for industry and ritual. Separate channels might feed a deep pool used for baptisms or other spiritual ceremonies, while another stream could power a mill or provide water for the messy, vital work of tanning leather or washing cloth. The true brilliance is seen in the silent, gravity-fed networks. Engineers carved channels with a precise, consistent slope, sometimes as little as a single centimeter drop for every 10 meters of length. This gentle gradient was enough to ensure a steady, reliable flow from a high cistern to a lower settlement chamber, all without a single pump. The entire system was designed for resilience. During a long siege or a severe drought, while those on the surface suffered, the community below could thrive for months, even years, on the vast reserves they had meticulously collected and protected. This command over water, this ability to replicate a life-sustaining river deep within the earth, was the final, definitive signature of a truly self-sufficient hidden world. The security of these hidden worlds was absolute, a terrifying prospect for any invader who managed to find an entrance. Picture a corridor suddenly blocked by a massive, circular stone slab, taller than a person and weighing several hundred kilograms. This was the rolling stone door, a defensive masterpiece, carved from a single piece of rock and set into a perfectly smoothed groove. It could be rolled into place from the inside by just one or two people, sealing a passage with the finality of a bank vault. Once shut, it was virtually impossible to force open from the other side. The layout of the tunnels themselves was a weapon. Corridors were intentionally narrow, forcing attackers to abandon their shields and enter single file, completely vulnerable. The path would twist and turn without warning, branching into identical-looking passages that often led to dead ends or fatal surprises. Some networks included trapdoors that opened into deep, spiked pits, or hidden chambers where defenders could wait in absolute silence before ambushing disoriented intruders. A military historian studying these sites observed that these were the ancient equivalent of a fortress, but one that leveraged the terrain itself as a defensive weapon. The greatest defense, however, was often the entrance itself. Invisibility was key. A doorway might be concealed behind a waterfall, look like the back of a simple cave, or be hidden beneath the floor stones of an ordinary-looking house. In Cappadocia, some entrances were accessible only through a deep, dry well, requiring a dangerous climb down in total darkness, straight into a potential ambush. This strategic use of the underground transformed passive hiding into an active, formidable defense. For the communities inside, these labyrinths were not just a refuge, but a controlled environment where they held every advantage, turning the earth above them from a threat into their greatest protector. But these networks were more than just feats of survival. They were also sanctuaries for the soul. Step inside an underground temple carved deep beneath the island of Malta. The air is cool and utterly still, a silence so profound it feels like a physical presence. The darkness is broken only by the flicker of a single lamp, its light dancing across walls polished smooth by ancient hands. In this place, cut off from the sun and the noise of the world above, the boundary between the earthly realm and the divine seemed to dissolve. For many cultures, the underworld was not an empty void, but a sacred domain, the home of powerful gods or the final resting place of revered ancestors. To build there was not a mere engineering project, it was a holy act, a way of drawing closer to the spiritual forces that governed life and death. The remarkable Hal Saflieni hypogeum in Malta is a perfect example. This labyrinthine complex, carved over centuries from solid limestone, served as both a burial site and a ceremonial center. Its architects designed it with astonishing acoustic properties. In one chamber, known as the Oracle Room, a deep voice spoken into a small niche resonates with a powerful, echoing hum that seems to vibrate through the very stone, a sound that must have felt like the voice of the earth itself during sacred rituals. Similarly, within the depths of Derinkuyu and other Cappadocian cities, early Christians secretly carved out small, humble chapels. These were not afterthoughts, they were central to the community's identity. The walls were adorned with simple but powerful frescoes of crosses and saints, and altars were hewn directly from the rock. The act of descending into these spaces was itself a powerful metaphor. It represented a journey of spiritual initiation, a symbolic descent into the darkness before emerging into the light of faith or understanding. Every carved symbol, every carefully placed altar, and the very experience of being in that deep, silent darkness reveals a dual purpose for these networks. They were designed to protect the body from earthly threats, but they were also engineered to nourish the spirit, connecting those within to something far greater than themselves. These silent, stone corridors were also the arteries of commerce, protecting the lifeblood of trade. Far from being isolated refuges, many networks were deeply integrated into the economic heart of their regions, functioning as secure banks and clandestine highways. Imagine a merchant caravan laden with silk and spices, not braving a bandit-infested mountain pass, but instead descending into a hidden entrance. Inside, they would find a cool, protected passage, safe from both the scorching sun and opportunistic raiders. Their precious cargo, whether it was gold from Nubia or incense from Arabia, moved through these tunnels in absolute security, completely invisible to the outside world. This was trade reduced to its most essential, protected form. The engineering of these routes was deliberate. Tunnels were often wide enough for a single pack animal, with smooth floors and high ceilings to prevent damage to goods. Rest chambers were carved at regular intervals, allowing merchants and their beasts to recover before emerging at a distant oasis or market town. This system transformed dangerous, unpredictable journeys into reliable, controlled commercial operations. But the economic genius did not stop at moving goods, it also involved storing them. In ancient cities across the Middle East and North Africa, you find vast, honeycombed complexes of underground granaries. These were not simple pits, but masterpieces of food preservation. Carved deep into the dry, cool earth, these silos maintained a constant temperature and humidity, perfect for storing vast surpluses of grain, olives, and dried fruit. The design was meticulous. Each individual silo was often sealed with a stone lid and clay, creating an airtight environment that protected the contents from insects, rodents, and spoilage. This was a strategic economic reserve. In years of abundant harvest, the surplus was hidden away beneath the city streets. Then, during a drought or a siege, when surface crops failed or were burned, this hidden bounty could be distributed, preventing famine and stabilizing prices. The very survival of the city could depend on this subterranean larder. In regions like the Silk Road, these two functions merged. A hidden network might connect a series of oases, allowing merchants to travel from one water source to the next without exposing themselves on the open desert. Secret chambers beneath a caravanserai could serve as a vault for a merchant's most valuable items while he rested safely above. This integration reveals a sophisticated understanding of risk management. By moving and storing wealth underground, these ancient civilizations created a resilient shadow economy. Their engineering prowess was not just about survival, but about ensuring prosperity, proving that the greatest treasures were often those that no one on the surface even knew existed. Life in an underground city was a carefully orchestrated symphony of human activity, a vibrant community thriving in perpetual twilight. Far from being a grim existence, these spaces were organized with a clear social logic, mirroring the structure of any surface settlement but adapted for the unique challenges of their world. Residential quarters were carved into the soft rock, often as small, interconnected family dwellings. Their size and location spoke volumes about social standing. Larger, more elaborate apartments, sometimes with multiple rooms and private storage niches, were typically found on the more accessible upper levels, likely reserved for community leaders or wealthy families. Deeper down, the living spaces became smaller and more uniform, housing the majority of the population in a system that balanced privacy with the efficient use of space. The air would have been filled with the sounds of this hidden society, the murmur of conversation echoing from communal areas. Central to daily life was the shared kitchen, a large chamber where the heat and smoke from many cooking fires could be managed collectively. Here, the community's food was prepared in large clay pots, the scent of baking bread and simmering stews permeating the corridors. Nearby, great meeting halls served as the heart of civic life. These were the spaces where leaders addressed the populace, where disputes were settled by a council of elders, and where vital decisions about rationing and defense were made. The confined environment demanded absolute cooperation. A single person hoarding water or carelessly blocking a ventilation shaft could endanger everyone. This necessity bred a powerful social contract, a set of unwritten rules that governed behavior. Leadership was not just about prestige, it was about responsibility. The same engineers who designed the air shafts were likely the ones who helped allocate living space and mediate conflicts over noise or shared resources. Even entertainment had its place. In the larger plazas or cleared chambers, you might find spaces for storytelling, music, or simple games, essential for maintaining morale during long months of confinement. This intricate social organization was not an afterthought. It was the glue that held the entire enterprise together. The brilliant physical engineering that provided air, water, and security would have been meaningless without an equally brilliant social engineering, a system of shared purpose and mutual reliance that turned a dark, carved space into a true home. The sheer scale of these cities forces a difficult question. How many generations of hands working in near-total darkness were required to carve a metropolis like Derinkuyu from the earth? The rock itself holds the only clues, and it tells a story of almost unimaginable patience. there is no single construction date etched into these walls. Instead, archaeologists see the evidence of centuries, even millennia, of continuous work. A tunnel begun by the Phrygians might have been widened by early Christians, and then have its entrance concealed by Byzantines fleeing a new wave of invaders. This was not a project with a grand opening ceremony. It was a living, breathing entity that grew and adapted with the people it protected. The workforce behind this monumental effort is one of history's great silent mysteries. Were they slaves driven by the whip, paid artisans who passed their skills from father to son? Or was this the ultimate community project, where every able-bodied person contributed a portion of their life to the collective defense? The absence of any written records from the builders themselves means we are left to read the story in the stone. The consistency in carving techniques across vast stretches of a network suggests organized, skilled labor, not haphazard digging. Moving thousands upon thousands of tons of rock required a system, a rhythm of work that continued for lifetimes. Imagine the endless chain of baskets, passed hand over hand through narrow corridors, each one filled with the rubble of a new chamber. The work was so slow, so incremental, that a person might spend their entire life expanding a single corridor by only a few dozen meters. Some theories suggest that construction was a seasonal activity. During the quiet winter months or in between planting and harvest, the community would turn its collective energy inward, downward, adding another room, another storage chamber, another defensive bottleneck. In this light, the hidden city was never truly finished. It was a continuous process, an ongoing conversation between a civilization and the threats it faced. Each new danger, each growing population, demanded a new response carved directly into the earth. The true architects then were not individuals, but time and necessity themselves, working through countless unnamed hands whose greatest legacy is the enduring silence of the world they built below. The silence of these underground cities is broken only by the drip of water and the careful footsteps of modern archaeologists. A farmer in Turkey, plowing his field, feels the earth give way, revealing a dark chasm that leads to an unknown world. A research team scans a hillside with lasers and sees the ghostly outline of a buried complex hidden for centuries beneath the soil. These are the moments of discovery that bring lost worlds back into the light. The process begins not with a shovel, but with eyes that can see deep into the earth. Ground-penetrating radar sends invisible pulses downward, mapping hollow spaces and stone walls by reading the echoes that return to the surface. From the air, LiDAR technology uses lasers to strip away dense forest canopy, revealing the subtle, man-made contours of hidden entrances and ventilation shafts on the ground below. These non-invasive tools create a three-dimensional map of the void, a blueprint of the emptiness left behind by the ancient engineers. Only then does the careful excavation begin. Each layer of soil is removed by hand with trowels and brushes as archaeologists search for the context that gives the stones their story. They are detectives of dust and decay, looking for the smallest clues that the builders left behind. A piece of charcoal from a worker's torch, a broken olive pit dropped in a dark corridor, or the skeleton of a rat that wandered in long after the people had gone. These fragments are the keys to unlocking the past. To answer the fundamental question of when, science provides several clocks. Radiocarbon dating measures the steady decay of a radioactive form of carbon found in all organic material. A single grain of wheat found in the dust of a storage chamber can tell us the last time the sun shone upon it. For the stone itself, thermoluminescence dating is used on any pottery fragments discovered. This method measures the tiny amount of light energy trapped in the clay since it was last fired in a kiln. revealing when a cooking pot was used in an underground kitchen. Sometimes the story is told by the walls themselves. The style of a cross carved into a chapel wall, the specific technique used to chisel a doorway, or the design of a stone loom weight can all be compared to artifacts from known historical periods. Each of these methods provides a piece of the chronological puzzle. The most astonishing revelations come when these scientific dates contradict established historical records. A network long attributed to the early Christian era might yield organic material dated 1,000 years older, pushing its origins back to the Bronze Age. This forces a dramatic rewrite of history, suggesting that the drive to build underground and the engineering skill to do so existed far earlier than anyone believed. With every scan, every careful dig, and every dated artifact, we are not just finding lost cities. We are recovering the timeline of human ingenuity, proving that the desire to shape a world beneath our feet is an ancient and perhaps fundamental part of who we are. These discoveries reveal a global pattern, yet the motivations carved into the stone differ dramatically from one civilization to the next. Compare the sprawling catacombs beneath Rome to the silent, majestic tomb of China's first Qin emperor. On the surface, both are vast subterranean networks, but their purposes reflect the core values of their creators. The Roman catacombs were a practical, communal space for the living and the dead. Early Christians dug these winding labyrinths not only to bury their departed but to gather in secret for worship, safe from persecution. The tunnels are humble, the burial niches simple. This was an architecture of necessity, a hidden world built by and for a community in need. It was functional, focused on the immediate realities of refuge and ritual. Now shift your gaze to the east. The mausoleum of the first Qin emperor was not built for the living community, but for a single individual's journey into the afterlife. This was a project of staggering imperial ego and spiritual belief. The famous terracotta army, thousands of life-sized clay soldiers, is merely the guardian force for the outer perimeter of a tomb complex that remains largely unexcavated. Ancient texts describe the main burial chamber itself as a miniature universe, with pearls for stars on the ceiling and rivers of flowing mercury replicating the great waterways of China. The engineering here was not about communal survival, but about eternal glory and cosmic symbolism. The purpose defines the design. In the West, the souterrains of medieval France were often expanded from natural caves, their corridors narrow and defensive, built for quick refuge during raids. They are efficient and austere. In the East, the tomb complexes were monumental from the start, deliberately constructed as palaces for the dead, their scale meant to project power for all eternity. Yet for all their cultural differences, the engineers of both worlds faced the same physical laws. Both understood the need for structural integrity, carving arches and pillars to support the immense weight above. Both mastered hydrology, with the Chinese builders reportedly using advanced methods to channel and contain toxic mercury, while the Roman diggers had to ensure their catacombs remained dry. One culture built downward for the community's immediate survival, the other for an emperor's eternal reign. This divergence in purpose shows us that the underground was a blank canvas. Humanity projected its greatest fears and its most ambitious dreams onto that darkness, creating hidden worlds that were as much a reflection of their beliefs as they were a feat of their engineering. The precision of these subterranean cities is so absolute that it challenges our timeline of human innovation. How could cultures working with bronze tools and fire achieve such flawless alignments and perfect gradients over vast distances? Some researchers point to the evidence itself and propose a radical idea that these builders possessed a sophisticated knowledge of engineering and astronomy that was later lost to history. They argue that the planning required more than simple plumb lines and water levels. Perhaps they used advanced surveying tools, aligning entire tunnel systems with celestial bodies. A ventilation shaft might not just be for air, it could have been precisely angled to capture the light of a specific star on a solstice, transforming a functional element into a cosmic calendar. Legends of lost civilizations, like the fabled Atlantis, are often woven into these mysteries. Proponents of these theories suggest that a highly advanced culture, now vanished, could have disseminated this knowledge across the globe before collapsing, leaving behind only the echoes of their genius in these underground wonders. Mainstream archaeology, however, offers a different, though no less remarkable, explanation. It attributes these accomplishments to the known cultures of the time, societies like the Phrygians or early Christians, who possessed an empirical mastery of their environment honed over countless generations. Their skills were not magical, but the product of intense observation and painstaking trial and error, a kind of slow, accumulated science passed down through apprenticeships. Yet, even with this explanation, the gap between their simple tools and their monumental results remains staggering. The truth may lie somewhere in the middle. These ancient engineers may have developed complex mathematical concepts and physical principles that we simply do not have records for, techniques that were lost when their civilizations fell or were suppressed by conquering cultures. We are left with a humbling thought. Our modern science is only now, with lasers and ground-penetrating radar, beginning to fully appreciate the subtleties of their work. The silent stones pose a profound question, not about aliens or myths, but about the untapped potential of the human mind and the tragic fragility of knowledge itself. This mastery of stone and air was matched by a profound harmony with the environment itself. These subterranean cities were not just shelters, they were masterpieces of sustainable design, leveraging the Earth's own properties to create a perfectly regulated climate. The rock surrounding them acted as a colossal thermal mass, absorbing the cool of the night and the stable temperature of the deep earth. In the scorching heat of summer, the underground chambers remained refreshingly cool. When winter's chill gripped the surface, the same stone walls radiated a gentle, consistent warmth, having stored the geothermal energy from below. This natural insulation meant a community could maintain a comfortable temperature year-round without burning a single log for heat or needing any form of mechanical cooling. Their energy needs were minimal by design, a direct result of building within the planet's own stable system. This low-impact philosophy extended to the landscape above. Because the cities were built downward, not outward, the surface environment was largely preserved. Farmland remained untouched, forests were not cleared, and the natural contours of the land were left intact. From above, the only signs of the metropolis below might be a few carefully disguised ventilation shafts, allowing life on the surface to continue uninterrupted. This was a crucial advantage in arid regions where every resource was precious. The same principle of conservation governed their most vital resource, water. While surface ponds and canals would lose vast quantities to the sun and dry winds, the underground cisterns were protected. Sealed in darkness and coolness, evaporation was reduced to almost nothing. Every drop of captured rainwater was preserved, making a limited supply last for months or even years. This holistic, sustainable approach was not an accidental benefit, it was the core of their longevity. It allowed communities to thrive in some of the most challenging environments on Earth for generation after generation. The design principles these ancient engineers discovered through intuition and experience are the very ones modern sustainable architecture is now rediscovering with advanced technology. We are learning to use the Earth for geothermal heating and cooling, to design buildings that blend into the landscape, and to manage water as a closed-loop system. They achieved this harmony not by conquering nature, but by listening to it, creating a blueprint for resilience written not on paper, but in the silent, enduring stone beneath our feet. Secrecy was the final, most powerful layer of defense for these hidden worlds. The knowledge of an entrance, the layout of a labyrinth, the location of a freshwater cistern. This was not public information. It was a closely guarded secret, passed in whispers from one trusted generation to the next. This was not merely about hiding a physical space. It was about protecting the profound reasons for its existence. For persecuted communities, secrecy was a matter of life and death. Early Christians gathering in the catacombs of Rome or the chapels of Cappadocia relied on absolute discretion. A single betrayal could lead to their discovery and annihilation. Their rituals, their sacred texts, their very identities were preserved in that protective darkness. The same principle applied to mystical sects, like the Gnostic groups who sought hidden knowledge, or the followers of Mithras whose initiation rites required total seclusion. For them, the underground was not just a refuge, it was a sacred classroom, a place where esoteric truths could be shared away from the prying eyes of the orthodox world. The architecture itself enforced this secrecy. A network might have multiple false entrances leading to dead ends or traps, while the true path was known only to the initiated. This deliberate obfuscation means that many of these networks likely remain undiscovered, their entrances long since swallowed by landslides or forgotten with the last person who knew the secret. The very act of concealing them so thoroughly suggests they held more than just people and supplies. What if some of these chambers were sealed not to keep invaders out, but to keep something in? Perhaps they served as the ultimate vaults, safeguarding sacred artifacts, lost texts, or knowledge considered too dangerous or too pure for the surface world. This enduring aura of mystery is a powerful magnet. It draws modern explorers and archaeologists who are not just looking for empty chambers, but for answers. They are searching for the whispered secrets, the hidden libraries, the final, untold chapter of these civilizations. Every new discovery carries the thrilling possibility of a breakthrough, of a sealed door that, when opened, will finally reveal why these places were considered so valuable that they had to be erased from the memory of the world above. The silence of these ancient cities is now broken by the murmur of visitors from every corner of the globe. Where once only the flicker of oil lamps illuminated the path, electric lights now cast a steady glow on carved walls, revealing details the original inhabitants might never have seen so clearly. Safety rails line the steepest staircases, and marked pathways guide thousands of feet through corridors meant for a select few. This modern rediscovery has brought these wonders back into the world's consciousness, transforming them from forgotten refuges into celebrated monuments of human heritage. For the local communities living above these sites, this interest has been an economic lifeline. Small villages have grown into bustling towns, supported by hotels, restaurants, and guides who share the incredible history beneath their feet. The global recognition fosters a powerful sense of pride and a renewed commitment to protecting this unique cultural legacy. Yet, this very admiration introduces a new threat. The gentle breath of 20,000 people once warmed these halls, but now the exhalations of millions of visitors each year create a different kind of atmosphere. The constant humidity from human presence can encourage the growth of destructive molds on ancient plaster and carvings. The subtle vibrations from countless footsteps over time can stress stone structures that have stood for millennia. Even the oil from human hands, gently resting on a stone door frame for a photograph, gradually degrades the rock. Conservationists now face a constant battle against this slow, cumulative damage. Their work is a delicate science of monitoring air quality, stabilizing fragile rock, and managing visitor flow. The central challenge becomes a difficult balancing act. How do you make these sites accessible to the world without loving them to death? The solution lies in the principle of responsible tourism. This means staying on designated paths, not touching the ancient walls, and respecting the fragile silence of these spaces. It means understanding that we are temporary guests in a home built for eternity. Our collective responsibility is to ensure that these masterpieces of engineering, which survived invasions and centuries of neglect, do not now fall to the gentle but relentless pressure of our own curiosity. The future of these hidden worlds depends on the footprints we choose to leave behind. The same principles of weight and counterforce that stabilized Derinkuyu for millennia now support the commuter trains rumbling beneath London. Ancient engineers discovered that a curved arch is the strongest shape for an underground ceiling, a fundamental truth that has never been superseded. When Victorian engineers dug the world's first metropolitan railway, they faced the same challenge, supporting immense earth pressure while carving out vast public spaces. Their solution was identical in principle, if different in material: massive brick arches that channeled the load safely downward. This was not a coincidence, it was a direct inheritance of a proven design. The brilliant ventilation systems that breathed life into entire underground cities evolved into the complex air-handling networks of modern subways, ensuring millions of people can move safely through the depths every day. Even the ancient mastery of groundwater control, with its carved channels and cisterns, finds its echo in the massive pumps and waterproof membranes that keep our contemporary tunnels dry. Modern engineers actively study these ancient sites as long-term experiments. They analyze how the rock has shifted over centuries, how the original supports have held, and how the passive climate control systems have maintained a stable environment without any external power. This historical data is invaluable. It informs the construction of deep underground bunkers designed for maximum security and longevity, and it directly influences ambitious plans for future subterranean habitats on the Moon or Mars, where settlers will rely on the same principles of thermal mass and resource conservation. The legacy of these hidden networks is not locked in the past. It is being excavated, studied, and built upon, proving that the most timeless solutions are often the ones we rediscover from those who first learned to build in the dark. A heavy silence often cloaks the local tales of these underground labyrinths, a silence filled with whispers of what might still be waiting in the dark. Over centuries, these networks have become layered not just with stone and history, but with potent myths and legends. In the villages perched above Cappadocia, you might hear an old story about a specific, sealed doorway deep within Derinkuyu, a passage said to lead to a chamber overflowing with gold left by a forgotten king. The treasure, of course, is never unguarded. Folklore often speaks of spectral sentinels, the restless spirits of the original builders, who are said to wander the corridors, ensuring that the secrets of their city are never fully uncovered. These are not just ghost stories, they are expressions of a deep-seated awe, a way for the human mind to explain the profound mystery of a place built with such impossible skill. Some legends speak of the tunnels themselves as being alive, as shifting labyrinths that rearrange their walls to confuse and trap the greedy. In other cultures, certain cave entrances are not considered mere holes in the ground, but as thin places, portals to other worlds or dimensions. A tunnel might be described as a gateway to the underworld, or a place where time itself flows differently. These myths frequently serve as cautionary tales, reinforcing the idea that these spaces are not for the unprepared. An entrance might be locally known as cursed, with stories of misfortune befalling anyone who disturbs its peace. While archaeologists find no evidence of phantom armies or interdimensional gateways, these stories form a vital part of the cultural tapestry. They transform a feat of engineering into a living legend. The tales of hidden treasures reflect the very real wealth and resources these places protected, while the ghostly guardians embody the enduring power and genius of their anonymous architects. This rich folklore reminds us that these sites live a double life. They are both physical monuments to human ingenuity and eternal symbols in the landscape of our imagination, proving that the greatest mysteries are often those we build for ourselves. Yet even the most perfectly engineered sanctuary cannot remain occupied forever. The silence that now fills these vast halls was not a sudden event, but a slow, creeping departure. The reasons for their abandonment are as complex as the societies that built them. In many cases, the very threats that made the underground necessary simply faded away. A new era of political stability might have arrived, with powerful empires securing the trade routes and pacifying the regions. When the marauding armies ceased their raids, the powerful incentive to live in darkness vanished. People naturally drifted back to the sunlit world, to open fields and bustling surface markets, leaving the labyrinthine cities as a silent insurance policy against a danger that never returned. For other networks, a shifting climate sealed their fate. A prolonged period of drought could have permanently lowered the water table, causing the deep, internal wells to run dry. Without that guaranteed water supply, the entire foundation of their self-sufficiency crumbled. In more dramatic geological events, a major earthquake might have collapsed critical ventilation shafts or blocked the primary entrances, rendering the complex unsafe or simply too difficult to reclaim. The decision to leave was likely a reluctant one, a final acknowledgement that the world above had changed, or that the world below could no longer sustain them. But abandonment did not always mean oblivion. These ready-made spaces were far too valuable to be completely forgotten. Throughout history, they have been rediscovered and repurposed by entirely new cultures with different needs. The very same tunnels that sheltered early Christians from Roman persecution later became secret hideouts for Byzantine monks during iconoclastic disputes. In medieval European towns, villagers often used ancient underground chambers as perfect, naturally cool cellars for storing food and wine. During the Second World War, portions of ancient networks were hastily reinforced to serve as air raid shelters, protecting civilians from a new kind of threat from the skies. More recently, some were used as clandestine storage or smuggling routes during regional conflicts. Each new layer of use, each artifact left behind by a different era, writes a new chapter in the story of the place. A Bronze Age grain silo becomes a medieval root cellar and then a modern tourist attraction. This continuous adaptation reveals a profound truth about human ingenuity. We are inheritors, constantly finding new purpose for the old bones of the world. The story of these networks is not a single narrative that ended with their builders. It is an ongoing chronicle of human need, a cycle of creation, desertion, and rediscovery that speaks to our relentless drive to find utility in the world around us, even when that world lies deep beneath our feet. The line between the world above and the city below was often just a single stone slab in a family's kitchen floor. This seamless integration meant the underground network was not a separate place, but a foundational layer of the entire community. Entrances were woven into the fabric of daily life, hidden in plain sight within the walls of a public bakery, at the back of a church crypt, or disguised as a dry well in a central courtyard. A shepherd could graze his flock on the hillside directly above a bustling subterranean market, completely unaware of the activity just meters beneath the hooves of his sheep. This was a world of two halves, each utterly dependent on the other for survival. The surface settlement provided the lifeblood of the underground, supplying the grain, timber, and textiles that could not be produced in the dark. In return, the world below offered its profound security and stability. It was the community's ultimate pantry, where vast stores of grain and oil were kept safe from rot and raiders. It was the fortress that guaranteed their survival when invaders swept across the landscape, and in many cases, it was the source of their most precious resource, the cool, clean water from deep cisterns that was often cleaner and more reliable than any surface stream. The engineering that connected these two worlds was a masterpiece of discrete functionality. Staircases were carved not as grand promenades, but as narrow, twisting passages easily blocked by a single defender. Passageways often began with a steep, difficult descent, a deliberate design to discourage any unwelcome entry from above. Yet for the inhabitants, moving between the sunlit world and the shadowed one was as natural as walking from one room of their house to another. This symbiotic relationship blurred the very definition of a city. Was the community the collection of houses on the surface, or was it the vast, hidden architecture that gave those houses their meaning and their resilience? They were not two separate entities, but a single organism with roots sunk deep into the earth, drawing strength from the darkness to sustain the life in the light. The principles of subterranean warfare were perfected not in antiquity, but in the steamy jungles of 20th century Vietnam. Here, a vast network known as the Ku Kai tunnels transformed the very earth into a weapon against a technologically superior foe. What began as a modest system of natural caves and old guerrilla hideouts was expanded into a sprawling, multi-level city, a hidden world housing everything from field hospitals and weapon workshops to command centers and kitchens. The Viet Cong did not need to invent new engineering concepts. They simply applied ancient ones to a modern battlefield. They used the same simple tools, sharpened shovels and woven baskets, to patiently excavate the hard clay soil. They carved narrow, twisting passages that forced larger soldiers to crawl, creating a defensive advantage as effective as any rolling stone door. The entire complex was a masterclass in concealment. Entrances were hidden beneath termite mounds, camouflaged by jungle foliage, or submerged under the waters of rivers. Air vents were disguised as anthills, their openings cleverly scattered to dissipate cooking smoke and human scent, making the network virtually invisible from the air. Life inside was a test of endurance. Soldiers and support staff lived for weeks in the cramped, dark, and humid tunnels, plagued by insects, disease, and the constant threat of discovery. Yet the network sustained them. It had its own water wells, stored supplies of rice and ammunition, and even featured small theaters for political education and morale-boosting performances. The Ku Kai tunnels stand as a powerful testament to the enduring strategic value of the hidden world. They prove that when faced with overwhelming force, human ingenuity can once again look downward, leveraging the timeless advantages of subterranean engineering to create not just a refuge, but an unconquerable fortress. A single shaft of sunlight piercing the absolute darkness of a subterranean chamber would have felt like a message from the gods. This is the compelling theory that some underground structures were not merely shelters, but sophisticated astronomical instruments. Certain ventilation shafts or carefully placed openings might have been precisely angled to capture the light of the sun or moon only on specific, sacred days of the year. On the winter solstice, the longest night, a beam of light could have crept across a carved altar, marking the sun's symbolic rebirth. During an equinox, when day and night are of equal length, another shaft might have illuminated a specific symbol on the far wall for just a few moments. This was more than a clever trick of light. It was a functional calendar carved in stone. For a community living in perpetual twilight, these celestial events provided the only reliable connection to the cosmic cycles governing the world above. They told farmers when to plant and when to harvest, and they gave priests the power to predict and mark sacred time. The debate among historians is fierce, as erosion and later modifications can obscure the original alignments. Yet, the possibility adds a breathtaking layer of sophistication to our understanding of these builders. It suggests their knowledge extended far beyond structural engineering into the realm of celestial mechanics. If true, these hidden networks served a dual cosmic purpose. They were a refuge deep within the earth, but they were also a mirror to the heavens, a physical model that connected the underworld with the stars. The same hands that carved stable arches to withstand the pressure of the world also designed conduits for starlight, creating a profound symbolic system where the deepest dark and the brightest light were forever intertwined. The same geological stability that preserved these cities for centuries is now turning against them. Our changing global climate is introducing new and unpredictable threats to these ancient marvels. The very rock that withstood sieges and earthquakes is being tested by a danger its engineers never anticipated. Increased and irregular rainfall is one of the most insidious foes. In regions like Cappadocia, more frequent and intense downpours are seeping into the porous tuff. This excess water weakens the structural integrity of pillars and arches, putting immense stress on chambers that have been dry for thousands of years. It is a slow, invisible erosion from within. Elsewhere, the danger is more direct. Sudden, catastrophic flooding can pour into ventilation shafts and entrances, carrying silt and debris that choke entire tunnel systems in a single event. The delicate equilibrium of temperature and humidity that these spaces maintained for millennia is also being disrupted. As surface temperatures rise, the thermal mass of the rock struggles to compensate, leading to new cycles of condensation and drying that can crack ancient plaster and damage fragile wall carvings. Perhaps the most alarming change is happening out of sight, deep below the ground. In many coastal regions, rising sea levels are pushing the water table higher. Tunnels and chambers that have been perfectly dry since their construction are now beginning to flood with salt water. This silent invasion does not just make sites inaccessible, it initiates a chemical reaction with the minerals in the stone, slowly dissolving the walls from their foundations. Conservationists are now in a race against time, trying to adapt preservation techniques to a world the original builders never knew. They are installing sophisticated monitoring systems to track minute shifts in the rock and changes in humidity. In some cases, they must carefully engineer new drainage solutions to divert the increased rainwater away from vulnerable sites. The fight to save these places requires a blend of ancient wisdom and modern science, a recognition that the greatest threat to humanity's hidden history is no longer the sword, but the slow, steady shift of the world itself. These silent stone walls are not blank, they are canvases, deep within the darkness where the air is still and the only light once came from flickering oil lamps. The human impulse to create and communicate left its indelible mark. Far from being barren, the corridors and chambers of these underground cities are often adorned with a stunning array of artistic expressions. You might find a simple cross, carefully etched by an early Christian seeking solace, or an elaborate fresco depicting a saint with serene, wide eyes. In other networks, the art tells stories of daily life, showing hunters pursuing game or families sharing a meal, scenes that connected those in the dark to the sunlit world they had temporarily left behind. Some carvings reach into the realm of myth, with strange, hybrid creatures or abstract patterns of spirals and zigzags whose meanings are now lost to time. These artworks are far more than decoration. They are a direct line into the minds and hearts of the people who lived here. A painting of a bountiful harvest on a granary wall speaks of hope and the importance of food security. A carefully drawn zodiac symbol in a hidden temple reveals a belief in celestial influences, even from deep within the earth. The art provides the emotional and spiritual context that the stones alone cannot, showing us that these were not people merely hiding in fear, but communities with a rich inner world with beliefs, values, and a defined aesthetic sense. In some of the most tantalizing discoveries, the walls are inscribed with texts in forgotten languages. These are not grand historical records, but often humble, personal messages, a name, a prayer, or a short commemorative note. Each one is a vital clue, a piece of a puzzle that could help historians finally pinpoint who built a specific section and why. The incredible preservation of this art is a gift of the underground environment itself. Protected from the sun's bleaching rays, the scouring wind, and the eroding rain, pigments that would have vanished in a generation on the surface have survived for centuries with vibrant clarity. This sealed world acted as a perfect time capsule, safeguarding the cultural richness of these communities. Their creativity did more than just record their existence. It transformed cold, functional spaces into galleries of profound human expression, proving that even in the deepest dark, the human spirit will always find a way to shine a light. A life spent in near-total darkness would have reshaped the human mind itself. The psychological pressures of prolonged subterranean living were immense, a constant test of will against the primal fear of confinement and the deep unease of perpetual night. Without the sun's rhythm to mark the days, time itself could become a blur, leading to disorientation and a profound sense of isolation from the world above. In such an environment, the ancient builders knew that physical survival was not enough. They had to engineer for the human spirit as well. This is why their designs went beyond mere functionality to create spaces that felt intentionally habitable and safe. The very layout of these cities reveals a deep, intuitive understanding of psychology. They carved out large, open plazas and communal meeting halls, spaces where the community could gather to talk, share meals, and simply see one another's faces in the lamplight. These were not luxuries, they were essential defenses against the fracturing effects of isolation, reinforcing social bonds and providing a crucial sense of normalcy. The incorporation of dedicated religious spaces was equally vital. A small chapel or a niche for prayer offered spiritual solace, a place for individuals to find meaning and comfort beyond the pressing reality of the stone walls. Perhaps one of the most psychologically astute innovations was the strategic use of light wells. These were not just ventilation shafts, they were carefully placed conduits for daylight. A single beam of sunlight piercing the darkness would have been a powerful psychological anchor, a daily reminder of the outside world and a symbol of hope. It restored a connection to the natural cycle, helping to regulate the body's internal clock and combat the despair that absolute darkness can bring. This holistic approach to design, one that considered mental well-being as critically as physical safety, reveals a sophisticated philosophy of architecture. The engineers were not just building a refuge, they were crafting a world capable of sustaining a complete human society, body and mind, through its greatest trials. Their ancient solutions, from communal squares to strategic glimpses of the sky, offer timeless lessons for any future vision of long-term underground habitation, reminding us that the most resilient structures are those built to support the human heart as much as the ceiling overhead. Deep within the Earth's silent embrace, flowing water became more than a source of life. It became a source of power. In the most advanced of these hidden networks, we find evidence of a profound leap in engineering, where subterranean streams were not merely contained but actively harnessed. Ancient engineers designed systems to capture the kinetic energy of these underground rivers, channeling their flow to turn wooden wheels connected to millstones. Imagine the rhythmic, grinding sound echoing through a dark chamber as a hidden current powered the milling of grain, a task fundamental to feeding a large community. This was hydraulic engineering in its most elegant form, transforming the latent potential energy of falling or flowing water into direct, useful work. While such sophisticated water-powered systems were rare, their existence is monumental. They reveal a mindset that saw the underground world not just as a defensive citadel, but as a viable, multi-functional industrial space. Beyond grinding grain, these same principles could have been applied to operate simple machinery, perhaps for crushing ore, fulling cloth, or even driving ventilation bellows. This innovation represents the pinnacle of integration within these subterranean designs. It shows that ancient engineers were capable of weaving together multiple technologies, from structural stability and air management to mechanical power, into a single, cohesive system. Their ability to envision and construct such complex, self-sufficient economic activities so far from the surface pushes the very boundaries of what we believe was possible with the simple tools of their era, proving that their hidden worlds were not just places of refuge, but also cradles of quiet, revolutionary invention. The soft glow of an oil lamp would have illuminated a woman grinding grain in a carved stone quern, her children playing quietly nearby in a chamber that served as kitchen, nursery, and home. In these confined worlds, the social fabric was woven and maintained primarily by women, whose roles expanded far beyond traditional domesticity to become the essential engineers of daily survival. They were the resource managers, carefully rationing stored water and dried food to last through months of confinement. They were the educators, passing down not only stories and skills, but also the critical, unwritten rules of underground life, teaching children the importance of silence near ventilation shafts and the layout of escape routes in total darkness. In the communal kitchens, the heat from shared ovens was a gathering point where women would cook, talk, and preserve a sense of normalcy, their work sustaining both the bodies and the morale of the entire community. Specialized spaces hint at their diverse labors, small niches with loom weights for weaving cloth to replace worn-out garments, and carefully swept areas that likely served as nurseries, where the very youngest could be kept safe and contained. This constant, vital work in managing the household economy was the bedrock upon which the community's long-term resilience was built. For some women, particularly in cultures where surface life was fraught with danger, the hidden city may have offered an unexpected form of autonomy. Removed from the immediate threats of surface-level conflict or rigid social structures, their skills in organization, healing, and food production would have been not just valued but paramount to collective survival. The design of these spaces themselves reveals an accommodation for family life. Living quarters, though compact, were often arranged in clusters, allowing extended families to remain together. Smooth, rounded edges on doorways and low shelves prevented injuries to small children, while interior windows between apartments allowed mothers to communicate easily with neighbors. Seeing these networks through the lens of family transforms them from cold engineering marvels into warm, living communities. The echoing halls were once filled with the sounds of children's laughter and the comforting scent of baking bread, a testament to a society that planned not just for defense but for a future. The stone corridors we have already found are only the beginning. For every Derinkuyu mapped and every Kukai tunnel system explored, countless more remain hidden, their entrances sealed by time and earth. They lie buried beneath the foundations of modern megacities, waiting under layers of concrete and asphalt, or they sleep in the planet's most remote and inaccessible regions, from the deep deserts to the dense, unmapped rainforests. The sheer scale of what we do not know is the field's most thrilling frontier. Our search is no longer limited to the lucky stumble of a farmer's plow. A new era of discovery is dawning, powered by technologies that let us see through the ground itself. Satellites in orbit now use sophisticated imaging to detect subtle variations in soil moisture and plant health, anomalies that can reveal the ghostly outline of a buried complex. On the ground, advanced geophysics instruments send pulses of energy deep into the earth, reading the echoes to paint three-dimensional maps of hollow spaces and man-made walls without ever breaking the surface. These tools are like giving archaeologists X-ray vision, transforming entire landscapes into open books waiting to be read. This technological leap forces us to ask much bigger questions, questions that challenge our understanding of ancient human connection. Is it possible that some of these networks were not isolated projects, but parts of a global web? Could there be evidence of tunnels or knowledge systems that conceptually linked continents, a shared understanding of subterranean engineering that traveled with early human migration? The uncanny similarities in ventilation techniques or load-bearing arches found in vastly separated cultures hint at the possibility of a diffused knowledge, a primordial science of the earth that was carried across the world. This leads to the most profound puzzle of all, the ultimate purpose of the largest networks. Were they merely defensive citadels, or did they serve a grander, more unified function we have yet to comprehend? Perhaps they were designed as arcs, intended to preserve knowledge and life through a global cataclysm their builders foresaw. Maybe they were linked to the planet's unseen energy grids or spiritual ley lines in ways we are only beginning to sense. The quest for these answers is far from over. It is a living, breathing field of study that calls out to a new generation of engineers, historians, and explorers. It promises that the next great discovery, the one that rewrites our history books, is still out there, lying in wait just beneath our feet, its secrets held in the patient dark. The thrill of uncovering a lost city is undeniable, but that moment of discovery carries a profound responsibility. These are not abandoned ruins waiting for our interpretation. They are the sacred heritage of living cultures. Every carved wall and artifact is a page from a community's story, and as explorers, we must learn to read without tearing the pages. The ethical dilemma is clear. Do we prioritize our curiosity or their continuity? For many local communities, these underground spaces are not archaeological sites. They are ancestral homes, places of worship, or the very bedrock of their identity. Intrusive digging or the removal of artifacts is not just scientific theft, it is a spiritual violation, a severing of a living link to the past. True archaeology is not a treasure hunt, it is a form of listening. It requires a fundamental shift from extraction to collaboration. This means that before any ground is broken, scientists must sit with community elders, with cultural leaders, and with the descendants of the very people who built these wonders. Their oral histories, their taboos, and their wishes are not obstacles to research. They are the most valuable data we have. This partnership can lead to a more respectful and often more insightful exploration. For instance, a team might learn that a specific chamber is considered a resting place for spirits and should not be entered. By honoring that request, they not only show respect but might also preserve the chamber's unique microclimate, protecting fragile artifacts that would have been destroyed by a careless excavation. Non-invasive technologies are the tools of this new ethic. Why risk collapsing a fragile tunnel when ground-penetrating radar can map its entire length from the surface? Why disturb a burial niche when a high-resolution laser scan can record every detail in perfect 3 dimensions? These methods allow us to study without stealing, to learn without looting. They ensure that the site itself, the context that gives each artifact its meaning, remains intact for future generations. The ultimate goal is to preserve these wonders not as frozen museum dioramas, but as living parts of a cultural landscape where knowledge is gained not by taking, but by understanding. This is how we honor the architects of the deep, by ensuring that their silent, stone legacy continues to speak its truth for centuries to come. The darkness below has always whispered to the human soul, a canvas for our deepest fears and highest aspirations. Across continents and eras, the underground has been universally imagined as the realm of the dead, the home of ancestors, and the storehouse of secrets waiting to be uncovered. It represents the great unconscious, the part of the mind where dreams and primal instincts reside, just out of sight. When ancient engineers carved their cities into the earth, they were not merely digging for shelter. They were physically entering this symbolic landscape, constructing bridges between the mundane world and the mystical one. A descent into their labyrinths was a journey into the womb of the earth, a place of potential death that also promised spiritual rebirth. To emerge again into the sunlight was to be symbolically renewed, having faced the darkness and returned. This is why so many of these sites served dual purposes as both fortress and temple. The same chamber that stored grain against a siege might also host initiation rites, where an individual's symbolic death and rebirth mirrored the community's own cycle of hiding and reemergence. The very act of building there was a declaration. It stated that what was most valuable, whether it was human life, sacred knowledge, or community identity, was worth hiding in the most profound depths, close to the foundational powers of the world. Their practical genius was matched by a symbolic one, creating spaces where every carved corridor echoed a spiritual truth. The hidden network was more than an engineering marvel. It was a 3-dimensional prayer, a physical manifestation of humanity's eternal urge to explore the unknown within and without. This journey through the hidden networks of ancient engineers reveals a world of astonishing ingenuity, resilience, and mystery. From the vast, self-sufficient cities of Cappadocia to the strategic, life-saving tunnels of Vietnam, these subterranean marvels demonstrate a profound understanding of engineering, environment, and the deepest human needs. They were not just holes in the ground, but planned, breathing worlds that protected communities, preserved cultures, and powered industries for generations. These silent stone corridors challenge everything we think we know about the capabilities of ancient civilizations, forcing us to reconsider the timeline of human innovation and the true meaning of a sustainable society. The principles they discovered through patient observation and brilliant intuition, from geothermal climate control to gravity-fed water systems, are now being rediscovered by modern engineers as we plan for our own future, whether in dense urban centers or on distant worlds. As we continue to uncover more of these hidden worlds with ever more sensitive technology, we are not just learning about our past, we are gaining a blueprint for resilience. We are reminded that the greatest human achievements are often those built not for glory, but for survival, and that true strength lies not in dominating the landscape, but in harmonizing with it. So the next time you walk on what seems like solid ground, pause for a moment. An entire hidden history, a testament to the brilliance and tenacity of those who came before us, might be lying in silent, patient darkness just beneath your feet. We would love to hear your thoughts on these incredible structures in the comments below. And if you want to join us for more explorations into history's greatest mysteries, be sure to